Hi everyone, welcome to my channel and my very first video. What I'm going to do is talk a little bit about video games I play and books I've read, and I hope that I can squeeze in a little let's play from time to time. I've been inspired to do this by a very dear friend of mine. Her channel is called Ravenswood, and I hope to remember to put the link to her channel in the description section, so look out for that. She makes very lovely Let's Plays and she's really great, so check her out. What I'm going to start with today is a little review of Resident Evil Revelations 2, which I downloaded from the PlayStation Store. Usually I prefer the retail version, but that was ridiculously expensive in comparison to the download. And looking back on it, I'm really glad I didn't spend that much money on that game. So that was actually the first game that was published in episodes, like the Telltale games. The first Resident Evil Revelations was also an episodic game, but it was released only as a retail version, so of course all episodes were already included in the game. And this is the first one where you had to wait a week to download the next episode. So Resident Evil Revelations 2 features as the main characters Claire Redfield and Barry Burton, and both of them come with a partner. Claire's partner is Moira, Barry's daughter, who we have already heard about in the first Resident Evil game, I think. And Barry's partner is a little girl called Natalia, who's a completely new character. So after a little short and trashy introduction, I think.
Terra save. Because tear doesn't have to end with a wrist.
Claire and Moira are captured and brought to this prison island where an outbreak takes place. Like, again, Claire, really? I don't know if that was supposed to be an homage to Code Veronica, or if they were just unoriginal, but that's where we are. Claire's being taken prisoner again on an island. Well, right. And yeah, so she has to try and find an escape from this island with Moira. So the episodes are always consist of two parts. First you play with Claire and Moira, and then after half of this episode it switches to Barry and Natalia. And sometimes with Barry you play parts of this island that you have played with Claire and Moira before. So it's a bit tricky because on the one hand it's interesting because suddenly you have access to areas that you couldn't access with Claire before, and at one point I was like, oh, that's how I get there. But on the other hand, you have to play through parts twice, and it got a bit tedious and boring, so... But yeah, it actually gets better in the later episodes like 3 and 4, where you don't have to backtrack through the exact same areas, so there's a little bit more variation in the later episodes. Anyway, generally I like this partner system. This is one of the strongest aspects about the game, because Moira has different abilities and uses than Claire, and the same with Natalia and Barry. So you can switch between the characters, and you actually should switch between the characters. I mean, it's possible to play just with Claire, and in the other section just with Barry. But there's a lot of collectibles and items that you might miss out because only Moira and Natalia are able to find them. So if you want to get the whole experience, you should actually constantly switch between the characters. But of course, the, let's say, secondary character, like Moira and Natalia, they're not so strong on the fighting thing. So Natalia not at all, actually, except for her brick, which is pretty useless. Sorry. Moira at least has a crowbar, so she has a little melee fighting thingy going on. But only Barry and Claire are able to use guns, and most of the time that's just really necessary. So yeah, like I said, I like the partner system, but well, that's basically all I like about the game. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's fun to play, it's not too difficult, but also it's not very challenging. And I think I played on middle, maybe it's better to play this on difficult. I had plenty of ammo and plenty of healing items, so there was never this feeling of running low on ammo and really planning my next move. So you could basically just walk through there and shoot everything. It wasn't too difficult, really. It was different in the older games. So, but yeah, it was fun to play. It was an easy play. It was the story was not too deep, of course, but it was fun, and that's all I can say about this game. It wasn't, like I said, it wasn't too bad. On the other hand, there were quite a lot of things that I don't really like about this game. At the end of each chapter, for example, you get some medals according to things you had to achieve during this section of the game. And in general, that's a really great idea, because it motivates you to play this again and try to gain all medals. But some medals are just ridiculously difficult to obtain. For example, there's this one medal where you're supposed to kill, I think, 3 specific enemies with a knife. So this specific enemy is invisible. It's this huge, I don't know, maybe it used to be a bee or something. So it's a huge flying thingy with a stinger, and it's invisible. But once it gets you, it's an instant kill. So you're supposed to kill this invisible bee that murders you instantly with a knife. Not only once or twice, but 3 times. Okay, I actually tried that. I actually tried killing this bee thingy with a knife. I never even found it. Yeah, so maybe it's easier to do this in the berry section because Natalia can spot these invisible enemies. But then you still have to switch back to Barry, and then you don't know where it is. And like I said, once it gets to you, it kills you instantly. So that sounds really, really difficult for me to achieve. And while I like a challenge, sometimes it's just too ridiculously difficult. Another big minus on this game is the atmosphere. A lot of other reviewers said that it finally has some horror survival game atmosphere like the old games, but I didn't really feel it. Of course, that's very subjective, but I didn't feel it. At first, I was really tense when I started playing in the first episode, but soon I found out that it's actually not that bad, and this tension left me really quickly. Of course, there are some scenes that, they have this kind of disgusting sickness to them, but that's not what I expect in a Resident Evil game. That's what I expect in a Silent Hill game. So there's no survival horror tension for me, there's sickness. Some scenes are, or some surroundings are really sick. But like I said, it's more like from a Silent Hill game. And that's another very big minus on this game, because there's several things that reminded me too much of other games, which I had the feeling they copied from these games. And that's, like I said, it reminds me very much of Silent Hill occasionally. Not only from these sick surroundings. For example, I had to go to a hospital once, and everything looked just so much like in the hospital from Silent Hill. And the creature design it actually reminds me more of Silent Hill as well, and less of Resident Evil. Of course, finally there's real zombies back, but that's just only a part, and some creatures, like I said, they're more like from Silent Hill. And another game they seem to have copied a little bit is Alan Wake, particularly with his flashlight. I mean, Moira has the flashlight, and she uses it to stun enemies. So she points her flashlight at the enemies. She can focus the beam for a certain amount of time, because then the battery runs out, and she can stun the enemies with that. And this whole focusing the flashlight to stun enemies until the battery runs out, and then you have to wait till the battery recharges. It's just so Alan Wake. And of course, not so much, but it also reminded me of The Last of Us, where you always have the flashlight. Sure, you have a lot of games where you have a flashlight, but when my battery ran out, I actually once found myself shaking the controller to recharge the battery like you do in The Last of Us. Because this whole flickering thingy reminded me of that. Or maybe I've just been playing The Last of Us too much lately. But there's another thing that was taken from The Last of Us, or that reminded me of The Last of Us, and that's the workbench. You get parts for the guns, and you can upgrade the guns, and you do so on a workbench. And if I remember that workbench from The Last of Us correctly, it looks pretty much exactly the same like it does on Resident Evil Revelations 2, with the work lamp shining on the workbench and everything. So they seem to have copied a lot. And also this whole feeling, Moira is a teenager, and at one time I was in this cabin thingy, and the way she talked and the way my coworkers talked, and this is actually what I imagine Until Dawn will be like. So, not that they could copy it from that, because it isn't out yet, although it's in development for a long time. But I always thought it always had this teenage slasher feeling to it, so I often thought, hey, I guess that's what Until Dawn would be like. So, you see, there's a lot of games in this game, a lot of elements from other games. But none of this is Resident Evil, you see? Of course Claire's back and Barry is back, and it should feel like Resident Evil, it just doesn't. It constantly reminded me of other games. So that was a bit sad, because that was the first game ever that I actually had this feeling. A lot of people hated 5 and 6. And I kind of understand why, particularly 6, because with the 3 different campaigns, they just try to please everyone. But particularly the Leon campaign had a very, very Resident Evil-like feeling. At least that's what I thought. But in Resident Evil Revelations 2, I just didn't feel Resident Evil very much. So let's get to the characters. Claire is obviously one of my favorite characters in the games, and Barry is he's Barry, really. So I love those two, and the way they were presented, it really seemed like a plausible development from who they were then and who they are now. And Natalia, she's kind of a wild card. Oh, another thing that was actually taken from The Last of Us, I just remember talking about Natalia. It's not only the workbench, but Natalia has the ability to sense enemies through the walls. And when you use this ability, it actually is very, very much like Joel's listening mode. So, another part from The Last of Us. So yeah, Natalia is a wild card. There's not much to say about her. But Moira, Moira is really annoying. A lot of reviewers wouldn't agree with me as far as I read that, but I personally find her really annoying. And there's one thing that really pissed me off about Moira. There's this huge secret that unravels throughout the episodes. So you know that there's something wrong between her and Barry, that they don't have a great relationship. And at one point, Moira says something like, yeah, I fucked up once. And you know what falls under the category of fucking up once is maybe locking yourself out or forgetting to buy something that your daddy asked you to buy. That's a fuck up for me. But then but then you get to know what she really did, and sorry, but spoiler alert, I need to get into this because it really pissed me off. So, here it goes. What she really did is shoot her little sister. Barry forgot to lock up his guns when he left his home, and when they were younger, and Moira accidentally shot her little sister, Polly, who we also know from the first game when she was mentioned. Seriously? I fucked up? Yeah, big time. Shooting your sister is not fucking up. It's a big deal. And I mean, on the one hand, of course it was a major revelation. And it shocked me. It really shocked me. And it was terrible to hear that happened. I mean, Polly survived. Thank God. But at first it really was a big shock for me to learn that. But yeah, then there were two things that I really didn't like about, and that's of course the way Moira deals with it. I mean, she really, really has trouble with what she did. She has a crazy fear of guns. She can't touch a gun. So she really knows that she did something terrible. But the way she talks about it, like, I fucked up once. Yeah, it really doesn't convey to me how much she really is troubled by that. So the way she deals with it is just not right. And on the other hand, there's of course Barry. Seriously, I don't believe Barry would forget to lock up his guns. That was my first problem with that whole thing. He was Star's weapons expert, and sure, I mean, he has a great thing for guns, but I also think that he is absolutely responsible about them. So the first thing I thought when she mentioned that, the first thing I thought was, that doesn't sound like Barry. I just didn't believe it. So this is also a thing that tainted this whole experience, that I didn't believe that Barry would be this irresponsible to forget to lock up his guns, and the way Moira deals with it. So yeah, it was a bit weird. Okay, so spoiler alert off. Okay, yeah, so that was that, which I didn't like very much. But it's also interesting because it influences the ending, and I'm sorry, but I have to go into the spoiler alert thingy again, because people complain that that would be a spoiler, although I don't really think it is. So there's actually two different endings to Resident Evil Revelations 2, and it's in connection with Moira and her fear of guns. So there's this one thing I think it's at the end of the second episode, where you have to fight a mid-boss thingy. And Claire loses her gun, and you have the option to either go for the gun with Claire, or go for the gun with Moira. At that time I didn't even know it was an option, because the game flashed this press, I think, triangle to switch characters. So at that point, I thought it was mandatory to switch characters, although I knew that I could move with Claire, but I thought, yeah, let's switch characters before Claire dies. But you actually have the choice to finish this one with Claire, or to switch Moira, and then Moira grabs the gun and she saves Claire by shooting the boss. Depending on what you do, there's 2 different endings. And actually, you know, I'm a bit of a sadist and I like the bad ending better, which I didn't get, because the bad ending is what you get when you finish this thing with Claire, and Moira never overcomes her fear of guns. Major spoiler alert now, major spoiler alert. So, when you fight this last boss, I'm not going to say who it is for now. So, when you fight this last boss, the creature grabs Natalia. Barry lost his gun, by the way, as well. And if you finished the mid-boss fight with Claire, Moira doesn't show up. The creature kills Natalia for now, but you know, there's this thing with switching your mind into a different body that this whole game is about. So the creature's mind switches over to dead Natalia, and Natalia awakes again with the villain's personality in her mind, and she then kills the creature, and she finally becomes the villain. But that's how the game ends. Barry is not able to shoot her because little girl and everything, and she doesn't either kill Barry, so she walks away and the game is over. It's a bit abrupt, yeah, but I prefer the dark endings, and children are always really creepy to me, so this is just really fitting for me, this ending. So if you finish the mid-boss fight with Moira, we're also in this situation that the creature grabs Natalia, Barry lost his gun, but then Moira comes because she got lost on this island before somewhere, and she makes an appearance, shoots the creature, and then there's a second boss fight, but never mind that. And in the end, everyone's safe, Natalia's safe. However, I mean, it's not really a happy ending. Barry takes her in and takes care of her. And at the very end, she sits in her room, creepily singing to herself, and she has this weird, creepy smile on her face. So I guess this villainous character is still in her, but maybe not totally. Yeah, but that's how the game ends as well. So both endings leave a lot open, maybe to imagination or maybe to another game, who knows. But yeah, that's how that ends. Spoiler alert, off. You also get 2 extra episodes. One covers Moira's story, what happened between when she got lost and if she makes that appearance at the end. It's very much like raid mode and very difficult. The first time I just shot every enemy and then ran out of ammo and I just couldn't go on anymore. I just died and that was just it. So I had to start over again. This time I basically only used my flashlight and my crowbar, except for those really huge enemies which sucked to kill with a crowbar. That was okay then. That was actually okay. But at first it was really difficult because I didn't know that I should use this tactic, because so far it was okay just to shoot everything. Yeah, the story was okay. I mean, you walked around with this old guy that you also came across during the game, So there's this really definite connection, and it's really filling in some parts of the story that were left out of the main campaign. So story-wise, it's really interesting, but gaming-wise, yeah, like I said, it was okay once I knew how to do this. The second extra episode is about Natalia. And that was the complete opposite because it was exclusively stealth orientated. And usually I very much suck at stealth. And sooner or later when I get to stealth passages, I try to be stealthy. But in the end, I just have to shoot everyone anyway. So most of the time I don't even try to be stealthy anymore. But here I had absolutely no other option because once the enemy saw me, the game was over. But yeah, it was okay in the end. It wasn't too difficult. Yeah, it worked out. What am I supposed to say? It worked out in the end. And I actually had a lot more fun playing this stealth passage because, it wasn't just stupid shooting and stupid waves of enemies. So I preferred that episode. Story-wise, it wasn't that interesting. It really wasn't. It wasn't necessary story-wise. But yeah, it was fun to play. And I already mentioned raid mode. You also have the raid mode. Usually, I'm not a big fan of raid mode. I hate waves of enemies, and particularly if I am under the pressure of a countdown, which I usually am in raid mode. But this one is a little bit different because most of the time you have all the time in the world. You just have to kill every enemy. And so that was a little bit more relaxing because you didn't have this pressure to finish it in a certain amount of time. Except for some stages where you do have this countdown. But even those are okay. Still, I'm usually someone who plays for story, not for action and stuff like that. So raid mode doesn't have this much of appeal to me. I played several stages because if you unlock all the medals in the stage, there's 4 medals per stage. 1, just finish the stage. 2, don't use any herbs. 3, there's each stage has a recommended level, which you should have. And 1 medal is play and finish the stage on the recommended level or below that. And the last one is kill all enemies. Sometimes you can even finish a stage without beating the last wave of enemies. But to get this medal, you have to complete every single enemy. And the 5th is, you get the 5th if you get the first 4 in one go. Not 2 in one go and 2 in the other go. You have to get these 4 medals in one try. And then you get the completion medal. And you can unlock characters by having a set amount of completion medals. And I played raid mode so far because I really wanted to unlock Leon, which I made now, and I need another 10 completion medals to unlock Chris, which I really want to do as well. So maybe I will get back to that, but in the end, raid mode is nothing that appeals to me very much. So yeah, that basically was it. So what's my conclusion to the game? Like I said at the very beginning, I'm glad that I didn't spend $45 for this game in a retail version. $20 was okay. It was fun to play. Although each episode ends with a cliffhanger, it just wasn't that crazy that I couldn't wait to play the next episode. Actually, I mean, the episodes were published in a weekly cycle, so you just had to wait 1 week for the next episode. In comparison to the Telltale games, where you just have to wait 4, 5, 6 weeks for the next episode. However, I preferred Switch because with the Telltale games, I usually can't wait for the next episode. Unfortunately, with Resident Evil Revelations 2, I could have waited longer because I wasn't that excited to play the next episode. The story was... I mean, what was the story really? They were stranded on an island with an outbreak, nothing new, like I said. And... yeah, that was it basically. Get off this island. Sure, I mean, sorry for this insert, but the story of The Last of Us wasn't very elaborate either. You had to get this girl from one end of the country to the next. But there's one thing that The Last of Us has that Revelations doesn't. Amazing characters. I mean, seriously, what would be The Last of Us without Ellie and Joel? They're just so believable. They go through this absolutely believable and amazing development. And that's just characters you love. You just have to love them. And Revelations has... I mean, the characters are really flat. Of course, they try to give Moira some depth with her big secret and her daddy issues. But I explained in depth why that didn't work for me. So the characters remain very flat to me, and so we have a flat story, we have flat characters. All we have in this game is that it's fun to play, and that's it. And that's why I'm glad that I only paid $20 for it. Would I recommend it? Yeah, for $20 and for a few hours of fun gameplay. Cause I think I played about for 10 hours or so. It felt shorter. It did feel shorter, but that's not exactly good. 'Cause in comparison, the first Resident Evil, I make it in about 5 to 6 hours, but I have to pause a lot. And because the tension, I mean, I've played it so many times that I could play it by heart. I know it by heart. I know every nook and cranny in this game. I know where the items are and everything. But I still can't play this for a very long time because I still tense up playing this game because its atmosphere is just so dense and I just can't play it for a very long time. So it seems that I play longer than these 5 to 6 hours, but in a good sense, because it really gets to me. It moves me. I mean, sure, the story isn't that great either. You're trapped in a house and get out. But the absolutely positive thing is the atmosphere in this game. And that's why it feels longer, and you just get more from this game, or I get more from this game. Whereas with Revelations 2, I played it for maybe twice as long, maybe 10 hours. It felt a lot shorter, so... But for this game, it feels a bit redundant. You play this for 10 hours, it feels much shorter, and then you're done, and you leave it behind you. It's really nothing that stays with you. So I guess that's my conclusion. If you want to pay $20 for that, fine. I don't regret paying $20 for it. I probably would have regretted paying $40 for it. So I do hope that the next Resident Evil will be. But I mean, don't we all hope that? For ages, haven't we all hoped that it will be a bit more like the first games? and we're always disappointed. Yeah. Sorry, that sounds really pessimistic. I actually hope that I just stay true to Resident Evil again and don't copy as much from other games, and that they get into characters a bit more. Yeah, so thank you for watching. I hope I'll be back soon. If you find my rant annoying or if you like it, hit the comment section. Give me feedback. So thank you very much. See you next time. Bye.